Hey there, everyone. Today we are going to be going over personnel, what to look for in each personnel position, and some of the personnel that I personally like. So, in general, for bench coaches and managers, you are looking for guys that can handle development well, handle mechanics, and handle aging. Of secondary importance is teaching, catching, defense, infield and outfield, that is, and teaching running. Strategy, if that aligns with you, that can also be kind of important. So just a little bit of something to consider there. Um, Overall, in my opinion, development is the most important thing for upper tier teams like MLB in particular, and aging is also only important in MLB, in my opinion. Mechanics is the most important thing in lower tier minor league systems where you're going to have a lot of your prospects that need some TCR. Overall, definitely development is the most important thing to have, though. For your pitching coaches, the only thing that really matters is teaching pitching. Now, the pitching coaching focus, obviously, you want that to align with the players on your team as much as possible, but teaching pitching is definitely the most important thing with pitching coaches. Same thing with teaching hitting or hitting coaches. It's all about teaching hitting, and hitting coach focus is kind of important, but again, it's not nearly as important as their actual ability to teach hitting in general. For your first and third base coaches, you're going to be looking at teaching catching, teaching infield and outfield defense, and teaching, with a secondary importance on teaching running and in-game running. It's all about improving defense with these guys. They don't really do too much else, and honestly, they don't do too much of that, but what they do have an impact on is pretty important. So another thing to consider is that your MLB situation is different than your minor league situation. You don't have staff cohesion in the minor leagues, and you don't have first and third base coaches. So the most important thing for staff cohesion is that your bench coach and manager, if you have a manager, are getting along with the rest of the staff. If that's happening, then everything else will kind of fall into place, and you shouldn't have too much of a problem getting good cohesion as long as your team is doing pretty well. And if you have one person on your staff who's a big problem, like we see here, we've got the general manager, Mike Elias here, struggles with personable, and the trainer, Brian Ebel, also struggles with personable. There's a lot of personable guys on the team. You might want to consider getting rid of those guys if you can get a suitable replacement. Obviously, the GM wouldn't be the case, but the trainer in this case, if we were the GM, he struggles with personable, so we'd probably want to replace him with somebody who has a little bit, who does not struggle with personal. Same with the third base coach. So that'll really help your cohesion if you see a guy who has a lot of problems with a lot of people. Another thing I would say is for your first and third base coaches, they can improve defense, but do not rely too heavily on that with your players. A lot of people fall into the trap of having a really good hitting, say, shortstop who's just a few points of range away from being elite, and he'll never get it at the major league level because they put too much faith in their coaches to do it, and it's just a really random thing. There's no guarantees. It happens now and then, but again, not super common. All right, well, um, for the minors, since you don't have to worry at all about your staff cohesion, you're looking completely at mechanics and development. For the upper minors, development is more important. For the lower minors, mechanics is relatively more important. Or development rather is going to be important at every stage. However, since your players that you're looking at getting to their potential will go through every stage of the minors, and TCR can happen anywhere. It's just more common at the lower levels of the minors. For the pitching and hitting coaches, again, just hire the best teaching pitching, teaching hitting that you have available. All right, now there's a couple of positions that I notably left out here. That would be scouting director and trainer. We'll do the scouting director first. So the first thing is you got to make sure that their scouting preference here is highly favored tools, no matter what. Okay. I know there's a lot of people that say, but what if there's a really good scouting director who's not highly favored tools? No, you will go for the highly favored tool scout every single time. It does not matter how good anybody else is. Really, the only time I would consider hiring a non-highly favored tool scout is if the best available highly favored tools is pretty poor at scouting everything, and there is a legendary, just normal favorite tools. That's the only time I would even consider going for somebody else. Highly favored tools genuinely has that much of an impact. And the reason is highly favored tool scouts look purely at ratings. So they're just going to tell you directly from the ratings of a player how good they are. And that's basically just translating their editor ratings directly into whatever rating skill you have. Now, the closer you are to the favorability and the more or the less tools you are, the more ability you are. In this case, this guy's only normal favor, or he is highly favored tools. But for a normal tool scout, they're going to start mixing in a little bit of statistics to their ratings. So they're going to look at what a batter is doing, for example. If he's walking a lot, then they might give you an inflated rating for the eye. If he's hitting for a really high average, they might give you an inflated contact rating. But generally speaking, basically, highly favored tool scouts give you a direct, true representation of what they think the player is. Everything else lies to you and mixes in statistics, which you can see for yourself. So there's no reason to get anything but highly favored tools except that rare situation. So as for what you want on the actual scout itself, you want to have as heavily favored scouting amateurs as possible. That is the first thing you want to look at. You are going to be drafting 35 prospects a year in the draft if you leave it at default. That's a large number of players. The odds are you're going to have a really good talented player in the first round that you're going to be looking at, and possibly even down a couple of rounds depending on how you have your system set up. So it's important that you have somebody who can identify those players. Next is international scouting. The international amateurs are big impact players. You want to make sure you have as accurate a read on them as possible. And international free agents, also pretty important to have a good read on. Next is scouting the minors. So obviously, it's a nice thing to be able to identify when a prospect has a TCR bump before the other team and be able to trade for them cheaply. And scouting the majors is going to be last in importance, mostly because you get very accurate reads from just about any scout, no matter what their rating is on scouting the majors. And so you could just think of it as the reverse order as it's listed on the page is the importance here. Now, as for trainers, really, you just want to have trainers that prevent injuries really well. So somebody who prevents arm injuries in particular is quite important. Obviously, if players get hurt, that sucks. You want to make sure that you can limit the number of injuries. Ratings can drop due to injuries. You lose guys for X period of time due to injuries. It's just something you want to definitely focus more on prevention than on rehab. To my knowledge, rehab doesn't even make too much of a difference. I mean, it's a significant difference, but it's definitely not as impactful as prevention. Fatigue recovery is important. I'd say behind prevention, I want to find a trainer whenever possible with a really good fatigue recovery rating. And you want to find guys that have good rehab if you can, but it's definitely secondary to the prevention and fatigue recovery. That's pretty much it. So next I'm going to give you guys a list of personnel that I think are the best at every position to hire when you're booting up a save if you don't have somebody good there from the get-go. So the first is your manager / bench coach. So we're going to go to the coaching ratings here. And again, I'm just going to show you how I find them. So for my major league manager / bench coach, I'm going to sort by development since that's the most important thing. I'm going to look at mechanics and aging as well. So the two options are the top two guys here, Bruce Bochy and Buck Showalter. They're both really good. They give you outstanding ratings. They're not going to teach anything well except maybe running in the case of Bochy, but that's not what we're hiring them for. And obviously, Buck Showalter, he's legendary in all three. That's pretty big. So those guys are, in my opinion, the best available. Now, for your hitting coach, you're going to sort by teach hitting. And Miguel Centena is the guy in this case that I would hire as my hitting coach. He is the ideal option. For teaching pitching, I would hire, or rather, he's our he's our pitching coach. Joey DeMonte is our actual hitting coach here. So I would hire Joey DeMonte as the hitting coach and Miguel Centena as the pitching coach. For the first base coach, we're going to sort by teaching catching. And I personally like Jose Zapata, who is right here. He is legendary in teaching catching, infield, and defense, or all three of the defense things, rather. He would be your first base coach. Scott Austin would be your third base coach. He's a little bit better at in-game running. He's outstanding in teaching running, so he's going to teach running and outfield. Zapata's going to teach catching and infield. And for the scout, we are going to sort by amateurs. And the guy that comes up as highly favored tools who's good at everything is RJ Harrison. He's excellent at minor leagues, international, and amateurs, which are the three things we really care about. He's still good in major leagues, and he is highly favored tools, which is, of course, the number one thing. I would also apply a filter to sort by highly favored tools since I'm not hiring anybody else ever. And for trainers, just sort by just about anything. Yeah, this guy comes up. Rick Jameyson. He is an amazing trainer, legendary at preventing arm injuries. He's good at all kinds of prevention. He is outstanding in fatigue recovery. He's even good at rehab. You can't get much better than this. So those are the guys that you're going to hire if you are starting out a live game and don't have somebody better already at the position. So I will post the list of guys that I hire in the description so you guys can just copy that or look at it without having to go through the video. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful, and I hope it really helps you guys improve. I cannot overstate how important this is for player development, particularly with the coaches. You want to make sure you get the best guys in the minor leagues possible to help develop your players. It takes probably 10 minutes tops in the offseason to find and sign these guys, and it really pays off. So anyways, I hope this was helpful for you guys, and I'll see you on the next video.